Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nisha Fritz. I'm the Communications Specialist for the California Faculty Association. CFA represents more than 27,000 tenure-line professors, lecturers, coaches, counselors, and librarians in the CSU system. We educate more than 470,000 students at 23 universities throughout California. We're holding this news conference today and call to introduce you to a new report researched and written by the California Faculty Association. This news conference is also being broadcast on Facebook Live. Joining us today are three leaders of the California Faculty Association who will explain the importance of this new report, as well as Dr. Gary Rhodes, Director of the Center for the Study of Higher Education at the University of Arizona. Also present with us today and available for questions are Fatima Rios, a political science major at CSU San Marcos, and Liz Sanchez, a graduate student in sociology at CSU Fullerton. Before we open up, I'll share some logistics. After the opening remarks, members of the news media will have an opportunity to ask questions, and when the call is concluded, they will be able to call me and arrange follow-up interviews with the speakers. Just call the number that's on your news release or email me at nfritz@calfac.org. Dr. Jennifer Egan, President of the California Faculty Association, will begin our discussion today. Dr. Egan is a professor of philosophy and public affairs and administration at CSU East Bay, where she has taught for 17 years. Dr. Egan.
Thank you. Good morning. Today, CFA releases a study that we have researched for many months. The title of the report is Equity Interrupted: How California is Cheating Its Future. And it tells the story of the systemic and steady defunding of the CSU over the past 30 years and the consequences that this has for our current CSU students. Our study finds California has shortchanged today's students, and we think we can do better. The summary narrative of our findings is that as the student body of the California State University has become far more diverse, more students of color, more students whose parents did not attend college, and more students who must work their way through college, the public funding for the CSU has decreased. Put more simply, California is spending less per student today than it did 30 years ago. In real dollars, adjusted for inflation, California spends 41% less on each CSU student today than it did in 1985. And yet, we believe this finding comes as no surprise to people who have been working in our state's higher education system for years. Intuitively, faculty know that this steady decrease in funding has had dramatic implications for our work and for what we can provide for our students. The imperative that we faced is to always do more with less, fewer resources per student, and less time that we can devote to each student. Too often, this thwarts our best intentions. Our report lays out the data behind this intuition in stark and dramatic detail. Consider this with numbers in real dollars. While the CSU student body has grown by 64% over the past 30 years, the CSU budget has actually decreased by 2.9% over the same 30-year span. If the CSU had resources that were comparable to 1985, it would have over $773 million more in its operating budget to serve students. Some of us may be surprised at the numbers and how steady and persistent the change has been, and how long it has gone on in an institution that celebrates the diversity of its students. It is time to lay the facts of the matter bare so we can begin to fix the problem. CFA is exposing the 30-year history of defunding of the CSU. We want you to know some of its consequences and to openly describe what our students today do not get that they did get 30 years ago. We believe that the CSU and CSU students are important, and we want to protect those students. We want them to get everything that students got 30 years ago. And let us not be confused, the funding decline applies to all CSU students, not only today's students of color. The decline in funding affects not only individual students, it harms California's prospects as a whole, because we need and rely on an educated population for the success of our economy and for our society. Systematic reduced funding over time has severe consequences for the health of our university system and for the experience of our students. We all have a stake in restoring full funding to the CSU. That is why we call the CSU a public good and the people's university. For those listening in, I urge you to review the executive summary of this paper, or better yet, read and download the whole report at the CFA website at calfac.org. You might be asking yourself why CFA is bringing this up now. Well, first and foremost, we care about our students. We faculty are affected when students struggle financially. When they are worrying about money, students can't consistently devote their time to a program of study, and they may be dropping in and out. Having a consistent experience is critical for student learning and student success. As faculty, we are resources for students, but students need other resources too. Books in the library, access to computers, laboratory equipment. This paper shows that the CSU is stretched too thin to give students the same level of education that it used to. For students who work as many hours as CSU students do, 3 out of 4 of our students work more than 20 hours per week. Their attention is divided. Students can't take advantage of all the experiences that enhance their learning and that many of us think is important to a university education. Those include visiting faculty office hours, attending campus events, engaging in community projects and service learning, participating in student life and student government. We have long said that faculty working conditions are student learning conditions. Well, that works both ways. Student financial conditions are also our working conditions. Students who are working long hours to pay ever-increasing fees can't devote as much time to their academic work. When they struggle, our classroom experience is diminished for us and for other students. CSU faculty are engaging and innovating. So many of our classes are participatory, hands-on, project-based, discussion-intensive, and interactive. We need our students to be all in, and if they're unduly burdened with ever-increasing fees, they can't be. We know we have others who share our concern for our students. We have a governor and leaders in the legislature who have made bold statements that they are ready to invest in making California a progressive leader in education, social justice, and innovative policy.
Science major, they're actually getting ready to graduate, I believe. And like 35% of our students in the CSU system, Fatima is the first in her family to go to college. So Fatima, what I'm wondering is, how have increasing student tuition and fees impacted your life while you've been in the CSU system, and what can we better do to support students like you?
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm getting ready to graduate this May, but it always hasn't been this easy being in the CSU system. During my freshman and sophomore years, I had to balance carrying 15 units per semester plus working 50 hours a week just to support myself and my family, and this was on campus and off campus. My paychecks paid my tuition because at that time I was not getting any financial aid, and that was all going to support my family when my mom and my brother got deported in 2014. I became the primary caregiver that provided for my little sister, who was at that time 10, and I was 18. It was really hard for me, but school became an outlet because I could focus on my studies for a little and not worry about any financial or family problems. My mother is back now, but I'm still the caregiver for my family now through my only job on campus. The thing is, my situation is not an anomaly. So many of my peers are just like me, students of color, low-income students, first-generation students who need help and support. We need the state to reinvest in the CSU so the current generation of the CSU students and the students who come after us receive and support what they need to be successful.
Thanks, Fatima.
Not just funding levels, but the funding strategies, as opposed to how much money might be going to instruction, to administration, to buildings? I mean, is there any kind of assessment of whether budgeting decisions have been wise?
I think that part of what really strikes me about our report is that if we adjusted for inflation, the whole CSU system has lost $773 million. If it were funded at the same rate it were in 1985. I think that is such a gigantic and gaping hole that talking about where $10 is spent on one campus versus a couple $1,000s on another campus, we've talked about that before in our previous reports, that we're concerned about the percentage of money spent on instruction, but the truth is the whole CSU budget is down 41%. So I think when we're talking about gaping holes, we could nitpick around how the money that we have is spent, but the system has been defunded to the extent that I think we have to say it's very different now than it used to be, and that's in every area. If you're taking that large of a cut, every aspect of the system is losing money.
Anna, if we don't have, do we have any more questions from those on the phone?
There are no further questions at this time. Please continue.
Okay. Well, before we go, I wanted to ask one question of Liz Sanchez, who is joining us by phone. Liz got her undergraduate degree in the CSU system and is now a graduate student at CSU Fullerton. Liz, I'm curious to know what you think about the paper's findings.
I sort of have like these mixed feelings. One, I'm just so excited to see faculty come together to do this research and to dedicate themselves to institutions and dedicate themselves to the well-being of the students, and also to see like this rise of in the numbers of diversity. So to me, it's like, wow, like this is absolutely amazing. At the same time, it's so worrisome as a student. My background, I come from a place of poverty, first generation Mexican American family, and growing up, I didn't think I had a whole lot of opportunity, but I believe what the system told me that as long as I go to school, I'll be given that opportunity, and as long as I dedicate myself, I can obtain the American dream. But instead of being in the CSU system, it's just so overwhelmingly confusing. I don't know if they're just pulling us in because they're just trying to find some kind of just to find users for finances. I mean, I don't know if we're actually getting support from the system that we need, and that actually it just completely impacts, my education, the stress level of having to work multiple jobs, and also trying to dedicate myself to activism to create some type of solution and to work along with faculty so we can help one another. It's just, it's inspiring, but it's also very stressful. And sometimes I think that the system counts on students to be so stressed out and to be so, busy that we can't ask these type of questions and we can't challenge the system because I don't feel like they don't want us to. So with this opportunity, I want people to know that students and faculty are working together, that with this proposed tuition increase and, with this proposed graduate initiative to push students out in 4 years and to raise the prices, we will be questioning this and we will be fighting back. And I know at Cal State Fullerton, we are organizing. We will be doing a walkout. We will be having a rally. And so I'm so grateful for this research. I'm grateful for these findings, and I very much look forward to working with everyone so we can make the CSU system affordable and accessible for all.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate that. If there are no other questions from those on the phone, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to those who are in the room who trucked out in the rain to join us for this news call, and to those of you on the phone for taking the